Hello buddies, welcome to Borderline Games. I'm Gareth and today we're playing Chaos Head. Episode 23 I want to say, I think it is. Last time we saw the group dive video that was leaked by Shogun, I think we're suspicious of. Shogun, we think, is the person in the wheelchair who we saw when Shibuya Crossing was... I think that's what it's called. I think when Shibuya Crossing was completely deserted for whatever reason, we saw Shogun, and they said something like, move quickly, do something now. And we've got to try and find a D-sword. So we're trying to find a D-sword, and we're leaving school, and we can hear what we suspect is Shogun's wheelchair. Shogun, we suspect, is a baddie, and we're about to confront him now, maybe. We've been listening to this wheelchair sound. Let's just go. Let's go. What was that? I feel like I've heard it before. Immediately after I heard it, I saw something across the hallway. I saw something cross the hallway of the first-year building in front of me. It was an empty wheelchair. Uh-oh. The video of the group dive I'd watched yesterday resurfaced in my mind. A chill ran down my spine and I froze. Maybe he's not going to be here. The wheelchair finished crossing the hallway and then it disappeared from sight. And right after it did, I heard an insanely loud sound. Silence settled back on the campus. I took a second to catch my breath and then I looked in the direction where the sound had come from. What was that just now? Why was there a wheelchair in the school? Not to mention one that with nobody sitting in it. Why was it moving? The crash I'd heard at the end was probably the sound of the wheelchair falling down the stairs with the noise it had made. It must have taken a fair deal of damage. It wouldn't surprise me if it'd been rendered practically unusable. I quickly looked around me. Rather than being calmed, the silence only made my fear skyrocket. I at least knew that I couldn't see anyone moving from my current position. However, I felt a gaze. Don't look at me. Oh God. Shogun. He'd come here. To this school. Why had he come here? Was it to meet with Yua? Was it to meet with me? I took a step back and nearly toppled over. Somehow I managed to keep my balance. I was thoroughly creeped out. Was he trying to harass me? Why wasn't he showing his face? It would have been so much more bearable if he just showed himself. Oop. Such a Scooby-Doo reaction. I was hit with an intense wave of nausea. I wanted to get away. I wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. Tomato, tomato. Covering my mouth, I moved back to where I'd come from. I bolted down the stairs and out from the building. I ran through the courtyard with no real destination in mind until I could no longer hold back the urge to vomit. The second I fell to my knees, the entire contents of my stomach began spilling out. Ugh. Ugh. The stomach acid made my throat burn. My vision blurred from tears. It was hard to breathe. The aftertaste was absolutely vile. I must have been way more maxed than I thought I was. It might have been because of the all-nighter I'd pulled. As I wiped the corners of my mouth, I looked all around me, restlessly, but I couldn't see a soul. However, the shadowy corners and the blind spots I'd never usually paid attention to had become terrifying to me. I began to think that Yua and Shogun might be hiding in them. The second my brain came up with that, I could no longer take a single step. Someone, save me. I wanted to cry. I felt nauseous all over again. I didn't end up vomiting, but a dry heaved several times. The pain made me cry even harder. I was nearly sobbing at this point. Get a grip. And then suddenly, someone's hand began to gently rub my back. Terrified, I turned around. Oh, hello. You okay? Rumi was there, with her weird voice. Everything's gonna be okay. I wasn't being condemned for feeling this way. No. Her words were a tender affirmation. Because I'm on your side, Taku. She didn't even so much as grimace at the smell of my vomit. That's when you know you got a real friend. She didn't show any signs of disdain, and when she saw my face covered in tears and snot, nor when she saw the vomit still clinging to the corners of my mouth. She simply gave me a gentle smile, reassuring me that it'd be all okay. She drew closer to me. She continued rubbing my back, gently. Why was it that before, and even now, every time I thought I needed to be saved, Rimi would always heroically appear in front of me? Right now, Rimi was right here. It reassured me. I felt better. Before I even realised what was happening, my true feelings began to pour out, despite the fact that I never talked about myself. Save me. Being alone is so scary. Maybe that was why I bothered coming to school. Up until now, I'd always thought I'd be way better off alone. Of course, even now, it was still terrifying to talk to others. I wasn't at all confident in my ability to actually talk to anyone, but with Shogun and Yua trying to destroy my life, I'd never been so anxious, scared, and alone. I wanted someone to be there for me. They didn't even need to be nice to me. I just wanted someone to be present. I'm scared of being alone. Well, if you're scared of being alone, I'll stay by your side, so you won't have to be. Those words held no ill will, no hesitation, no irresolution. Though of course, I can't be there all the time. Her shy gaze suddenly moved up toward the sky. Her eyes were looking so far away. Just what could she be looking at in the sky? We'll go to school in the morning. Talk about whatever comes to mind in between classes. Eat together at lunchtime. Then at the end of the day, we'll head back home. Sometimes stopping by a shop or two on the way back. Then when we do go back, we'll chat for a bit in your room. And then when we're all tuckered out, we'll say goodbye with a nice wave and a see you tomorrow. If you're fine with that, I can definitely go the distance. I've always wanted to be that person for someone. Wasn't that kind of almost like being in a relationship? I was stunned. She was completely serious. I could see it on her face. Why? Huh? Why would you go that far? Because. A flag if I'd ever seen one, right? Because I love you, Taku. I could see it coming from a mile away. That had to be where she was going for. That's what she was going to say, right? Granted, I had no idea, no clue why Rimi would have fallen for me. No. Wait. This shit had to be bait. Something similar had happened before with Yua. With her, it had all been nothing more than deception, ending with me drowning in the depths of despair. So I couldn't get my hopes up. I had to prepare for the worst. It was possible that Rimi too was an enemy. Bishy! Huh? She suddenly saluted me. I was taken aback by the suddenness of it, and my mind shot to the possibility that she was about to reveal her true self. And yet, all that I saw on Mimi's face was that same bright, gentle smile. Because we're friends, of course. The way I see it, it'd be weirder if I didn't help you, you know? Well, there you go, that's why. So no more being sad. Being a sad sap, Taku. Understood? Because we were friends. If she'd said, because I love you, Taku, and this is how I'm going to show it, it would have felt like my life had begun anew. But even if we'd be friends, that alone made me incredibly happy. Having someone being kind to me. Having someone do things for me without exception, without expecting anything in return. I couldn't believe how happy it made me. It might have been the very first time I'd ever felt like that. But above all else, it made me realise that I wasn't alone. To me, Rimi's existence was my salvation. The nausea I'd felt earlier had finally subsided and I was feeling much better. Here, wanna use this? Rimi held out a vermilion handkerchief. It had a faint floral scent. I meekly accepted it, but I was hesitant to use it. I don't mind if you get it dirty. Heck, why don't you just keep it? Thank you. I felt guilty about it, but I ultimately decided that I'd accept her generosity. I wiped off the vomit that had stained the corners of my mouth with the handkerchief. Gross. It was the first time I'd ever received a present from a girl that wasn't a family member. I wasn't so sure about calling it a present, though. For me, someone who was so isolated and helpless, even a simple thing like this felt like an irreplaceable treasure to me. I felt so delighted, so relieved, that I nearly started to cry all over again. My little phone needs to be put in vibrate mode. It's now in vibrate mode. Should we mosey on home then? Her voice was so carefree. We'll head back together. Apparently she already intended to make good on what she'd said before, that she'd stay by my side. Not that I'd told her whether I wanted her to or not, yet. But it wasn't like I had any intention of saying no. Being alone terrified me. I didn't want to be alone. As I was now, I had no one to rely on but Rimi. Oh, abrupt ending of the music. However, I still couldn't say that I was stable now, even with Rimi with me. On the way back, I chose to take a different route than usual, walking cautiously all the way. I couldn't stop trembling. Every corner with even an inch of a shadow seemed dangerous. Every time I got into any kind of intersection, I was tormented by delusions of Yua or Shogun waiting for me at the end of it, making me freeze in place. Whenever that happened, Rimi would take over. She'd look over toward the end of the intersecting road, and then when the coast was clear, she'd nod to me. It's okay. There's no one there. Relieved, I followed after her. Everything she'd done without even a hint of irritation. Say, can I ask you something? What the heck happened back there? I was slightly hesitant to tell her. If I said something here, Rimi could become a target for Shogun. I'd get her involved. Oh, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. No. I'll tell you. My mouth had already started moving. I definitely didn't feel comfortable with the prospect of getting her involved, but if I didn't explain to her what was happening here, she wouldn't be able to understand the gravity of the situation. For the sake of my well-being, I had to turn a blind eye to the possibility that it would put her in danger. She'd been the one who'd said she'd stay by my side, so I was sure she'd be fine with it, so I told her everything. I told her that Shogun was the actual new-gen culprit. that Yua was one of his underlings. That they were both stalking me. What had happened in front of 107 the other day. I laid it all bare, albeit not without a fair share of stuttering. How's she going to react to that? So you're mad? Shibuya 107, maybe that's what this crossing is called. What did I call it before? Shibuya Scramble. When I told her about the time Shogun appeared before in a wheelchair, Rimi's lips pursed and she began to ponder. I'd always wanted to ask her about back then. Seemed like now was as good time as any. Oh, okay, about when we saw her for the first time. I wonder if I saw anything like that. An old man in a wheelchair. She certainly didn't sound like she had. She tried to remember. Oh, we asked if she'd seen him, and she said no. That's interesting. It's really important. But Rimi frowned, almost like she was hesitant to say what was on her mind. For starters, the Shibuya Station Plaza wasn't empty. Far from it. You know that, right? It was the same as always. Ooh. So that was what Rimi had seen back then. I was hoping that she and I would agree on what we'd seen, but I guess not. Rimi, or me, which one of us had seen what the area was actually supposed to look like? Hang on. Rimi, or me, which one of us had seen what the area was actually supposed to look like? Okay, I got it. Had I been wrong about what I'd seen after all? Had that empty Shibuya been nothing more than a delusion of mine? But if it was, then there was a small discrepancy. An old man had appeared in that empty Shibuya. Shogun. What was the explanation for that? If the Shibuya being empty part was a delusion, then Shogun could be a delusion as well. There were a whole bunch of people in front of that station, so it'd be kind of hard to notice one guy in a wheelchair. So, yeah. Sorry. I didn't see anybody like that. Sorry. I wish I could help. At the very least, I knew Shogun himself wasn't a delusion. At first I thought he was just a delusion, but ever since the group dive video had come out, my perception of him had swapped to the exact opposite. Shogun was real. He existed in reality. But that empty Shibuya, meanwhile, it could have been just a delusion. And in reality, the front of the station had been overflowing with people just like it always was. I was the only one who'd observed something different. A different set of scenery than everyone else. But how could that be possible? So, putting all that aside, do you mind if I ask you a favour? Huh? Rimi joined her hands together in a prayer-like gesture. There's a CD I really want to buy. And since we've come all this way, I'd like to make a real quick stop. Would you be okay with that? I really wanted to get back to my base as soon as possible. The reason I'd taken such a long detour was because I was afraid of the possibility that Yua or Shogun might have been ready to ambush me. It wasn't so I could go on some shopping spree. But if I were to refuse all that, she might end up going back on her promise to stay by my side. If I were to fuck up badly enough, she might get angry and leave by herself. What the hell should I do? This sucked. I needed Rimi to stay with me. I wasn't sure I could make it to my base alone. In the end, I wasn't able to refuse. So I did what I had to in order to survive and stuck as close as possible to her. I guess it was reasonable to think that Yua wouldn't attack me in a public place like this. But I was more afraid that they might have been hiding among the crowd. Every time I would almost bump into someone, I would scream inside my head. Police cars? Rimi's words frightened me. Oh, that was Rimi talking. I quickly retreated behind her. No, protect Shibuya from terrorists. Okay, cool. And oust the criminal for a safer city. So this is about an anti-new gen thing, right? Rimi was right. There were 2 police cars parked on the road, and right next to them were 3 police officers in uniform. The police had also been pursuing me. Obviously the basis behind it was a complete false accusation, but the incompetent police didn't know that. Those cops might have been searching for me too. Or so I'd thought. That apparently wasn't the case. The cops' gazes were fixated on the crowd of people marching down the street like they owned it. Were they protesters or something? They were carrying these giant signs and flags, and they were wearing the typical sashes and headbands you'd see among those kinds of people. There was a child marching along with the parents holding hands with both of them. He looked like he had no idea where he was, and he was wearing a t-shirt with the words "Whose eyes are those eyes" written on it in a permanent marker. I bit my lip. I wonder why they're protesting. The people marching were of all ages and genders. Their march was almost silent and solemn, but at times they all echoed their chants. Drive the devil out of Shibuya! Expel his demons from this place! Demons? On the signs were a number of different things, such as drive the devil out of town or protect Shibuya from terrorists. It must have been some kind of protest against the new gen instance. There was no point in protesting against that. If they had the time to do that, then could they please just hunt down Shogun and kill him? Then I wouldn't need to worry about him anymore. Taku, let's go. Clearly uninterested, Rimi turned her gaze away from the protesters and quickly started toward the entrance to the CD shop. MHV, don't think I didn't notice. As soon as we entered the shop, Rimi headed straight toward the indie section. Unlike the J-pop section, there weren't many customers there. Rimi stopped in front of the shelf P, then started looking for the CD she wanted. But after a minute of browsing, her shoulders slumped. Darn it. I don't think they have it. An indie group whose name started with P. Could that be... Taku, do you know Phantasm? They're all the rage right now. So it was them. How could I not know them? I'd even gone so far to see their concert, and I owned a CD. I nodded and Rimi smiled. I'm not really super in tune to this kind of stuff, so I only found out about them recently. I planned to borrow it from a friend, and no one I know seems to have it. That's why I figured I'd just go out and buy one for myself. It's been over a week since then, and I've been looking everywhere for it, but no matter where I go, it's always sold out. Are they ever going to restock it? I own it. Rimi's eyes went wide. You own it? You mean the CD? I showed her a nod, and when I did that, Rimi... Oh, let's go green. Green time! Green and mean. Put her hands on my shoulders. She suddenly brought her face in close to mine, which immediately made me flustered. The sweet smell of shampoo wafting from Rimi's hair tickled my nose, and I felt my face turning red. Hey, Taku. Let's make a deal. A deal? If you lend me that CD in return, I'll... She looked at me, her expression dead serious. I gulped. She'll what? What was she going to do? Now we've got the waves again. So we know that this is probably a full-on delusion then in that case, right? I feel like there's definitely a pattern between a inconsequential delusion where something wacky happens, you always get like this kind of wavy effect, whereas if something seems to be consistent with plot and moving plot forward, there's no waving. Rimi's cheeks flushed slightly in embarrassment, and then, having seemingly made up her mind, she whispered something to me. "I'll let you do whatever you want to me." Huh? When I understood the meaning behind her words, my brain stopped computing. I couldn't tell if she was joking or being serious. I tried to look away, but before I could... "Get down." Rimi glanced at our surroundings, then pressed down on my shoulders hard. Without really knowing why, I obeyed her. I crouched down and leaned against the CD shelves, hugging my knees. Rimi also crouched down in front of me. I was completely lost. What the hell was she planning? "Sit down and straighten out your legs." Did she want me to sit directly on the floor? I didn't want to act like such a DQN, but Rimi didn't wait for my consent. She grabbed both my calves and forced my legs to straighten out. I don't like the vibe of this. I couldn't stop myself from sliding down to the floor. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. Right as my legs hit the floor, Rimi got on top of me. Whoa. Shush. Rimi put her index finger on my lips. She wanted me to stay quiet, evidently. But doing something like this inside a store... As if she'd read my mind, Rimi started giggling. "This is the indie music corner. Not many customers come back here. If we stay low like this, no one will notice us." What was she implying? Taku. Rimi moved her face even closer. Her breath stroked my cheeks. It was... hot. I couldn't avert my gaze from Rimi's shimmering eyes. I could feel myself being sucked right into them. It was like I was under some magic spell. Rimi was staring straight at me, just as I was at her. As we stared at each other, Rimi's hands began to move. And then she started undoing my blazer, one button at a time. "What are you..." Pay me no mind, Rimi's hand grabbed hold of my tie. With one pull, she unfastened it, and then she began unbuttoning my shirt. "Hey, people are gonna see." "You're right. It'd be very, very bad if someone saw us." Despite what she'd just said, Rimi's slender hands continued to move. They artfully slid beneath my shirt and onto my bare chest. Her cool hand slowly glided across my skin. What a bewitching smile. She'd always been so cheerful and energetic, never once emitting any kind of sexual vibe or intention, but now the expression on her face made my heart throb. "Taku, your heart is pounding." "Rimi, you're terror sexy." Terror sexy. Oh god, I said that out loud. That alone went to show how shaken I really was. What does that mean, I wonder? Won't you tell me, Taku? It means you're so unbelievably sexy. Rimi's fingers steadily crept along my skin and then they travelled down my neck. It tickled. It felt better than anything I'd ever felt before. "You can do anything you want to me. Are you ready?" Following my instincts, I nodded repeatedly. "Then, shall we do it here?" What? I couldn't believe my own ears. Do it? Did she mean... do what? Oh god. I think we're going to take a break from Green Ones or at least in the near future. Hello? Suddenly I came back to myself. Rimi was waving her hand in front of my face. Her eyebrows furrowed in confusion. I wasn't sitting on the floor and Rimi wasn't on top of me. We were just standing there facing each other like people normally did. "What's wrong?" Looked like I'd lost you somewhere for a second there. No, nothing. Whoa, calm down. I took a step back and from Remy turned my back to her and took a deep breath. Holy shit, that'd be the hottest delusion of all time. I was so fucked up. Not to mention a self-loathing idiot. I couldn't believe I just thought that. Actually, no, forget that. Remy was the one that was talking about giving me something in return. You'd see that line before in an infinite number of H scenes. Any guy who'd had even dipped his toes into the genre would have had his imagination go wild over it. Anyway, what was she actually planning to do for me? So I take it you weren't listening, huh? Sorry. Then I'll ask again. If I do something for you, could you lend me this CD I really want to listen to? Huh? Good mind, right? Come on, I promise I'll make it up to you. Life was a cruel mistress, though I suppose it was my fault for expecting anything. Come to think of it, I wasn't supposed to be into 3D girls at all, yet I just had a delusion about doing that with Remy. Why? When I agreed to Remy's proposal, she delightedly struck a victory pose. That sight was so amusing to me that despite the critical situation I was in, I couldn't help but laugh. I managed to make it back to base safely. Thanks to Remy, of course. One thing ended up catching me off guard, though. When we arrived, I'd asked her to wait outside while I cleaned my room, but she flat out refused. Come on, I saw exactly how dirty it was last time. There's no point in trying to clean it for me. You don't have to try and make it look like you're someone you're not. We're friends after all, right? Yeah, but I wish I knew what exactly that meant. Remy was completely absent from my memory, meaning I didn't really know her. Every once in a while I'd find myself taken aback at how ridiculously friendly Remy was whenever she talked to me. It wasn't unpleasant or anything, but it only made it all the more clear how different we felt about each other. On that particular note, was Remy serious about there being no point in me cleaning my room? The floor was littered with empty box lunches, and the bed was piled high with Eroge cases with not exactly the most safe for work cover art. Either Remy had nerves of steel, or she had no reason to feel on edge around me, but trying to figure out which it was only made me feel even more confused. Remy, unaware of how distressed I was, went to sit on the sofa, looking earnestly over the lyric booklet included in the Phantasm CD. I plopped down in my chair, and the tension flooding my body left soon after. My mind was completely maxed after spending most of the day terrified. Yet I wasn't feeling that exhausted. Maybe that was thanks to Remy being there. Anyway, what should we do? Closing the lyric booklet, Remy stretched her arms out high and sent a smile my way. What should we do? What were we supposed to do? She hadn't come here to hang out or anything, she just wanted me to lend her a CD. She was doing me a favour by staying with me, but what the hell were we supposed to actually do? Did we have to do anything? If we were in an Eroge, we'd probably jump straight into a H scene, but... Wait, stop, I really shouldn't be thinking about that right now. Even under the best circumstances, it was still a very tense situation, being alone in a room with a 3D girl and all. If I were to have some unwelcome delusions, I might suddenly shoot back into reality and end up saying something weird. Silence. That's not good. Remy was staring vacantly at the obvious manga scattered on the floor and the Eroge piled up on the bed. Awkward. I knew that most of the awkwardness would dissipate if I just said something, but the only subjects I could think of were video games and anime. I doubted that Remy knew anything about either. Wouldn't it be more logical for Remy to say something? She was the one who'd said she'd stay with me and all. This was going to be a bad time if she actually expected me to lead the conversation. Jesus Christ. I really did suck with 3D girls. I was grateful to her for staying with me, but I couldn't handle the sheer unrelenting silence. The fact that the room barely had any light was also an issue. It gave off the illusion that the room was dark for some lewd reason. Unable to take it anymore, I turned to face my PC. I needed to look up something. I've been thinking about it at school. It might end up giving me a hint as to how I'd get my hands on a D-sword. Is it possible to translate images pictured in the mind to actual images? Using what Sinner had told me about the VR technology, and people being electronic devices as a base, I began researching the subject. What you up to? Remy stood up and approached my desk. Should I explain? But how to go about it? It'd take forever if I told her everything. And I guess we're going to find out how long it takes next time on Borderline Games to explain everything to Remy. Remy? That's her name, right? Remy. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Chaos Head, and I will see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye-bye. Bye. Bye.